Is Vanderbilt up for the challenge of stopping Garrett Nussmeier and LSU? I think they are.
You are Locked On Vandy, your daily podcast on the Vanderbilt Commodores, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Corey Burton. Thanks for making us your first listen each and every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube as a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. So we got a action-packed show. It's LSU week, so this is exciting. Vanderbilt coming off a bye, a much-needed reset, a much-needed kind of get your mind right, react to the loss at Alabama, learn from those mistakes, and really put together a nice plan and put some things in motion for a back half of the season run with all your goals still ahead of you. Now, we're going to talk about how to attack this LSU defense. We're going to talk about defending Garrett Nussmeier, but really what I want to talk about, really where I want to start, and I never thought I'd say this at this point in the season with what LSU's been doing, with what LSU did in the offseason, how they started the season against Clemson, how they, all of that, how they beat Florida, how they looked offensively, the weapons they had. Garrett Nussmeier coming in is, he was the top dog in the SEC at the quarterback position. Some things have changed, and this happened. Vanderbilt opens as a 1.5 point favorite. It's really a coin flip. So right now, Vegas has them as the betting favorite, the over under 48.5. But they are the favorites. I think I've seen lines at 2.5, 1.5, just kind of in that ballpark. Really kind of a pick 'em, but they do consider Vanderbilt the favorite. The ESPN percentage thing has them at 60.5%. No, 61% now, the matchup predictor. So people think some things about Vanderbilt. People think some things against LSU, and we're gonna decipher between the two. Now, I spent a little bit of last week just kind of glancing at LSU, talking about really from more of a Vanderbilt perspective, what they needed to do. But here's the wild thing. Vanderbilt's considered favorites. I won't repeat that again. They're considered favorites. That's the wild part because LSU, like I said, all their preseason hype was huge. They were considered a contender, a real contender, maybe in some people's eyes a favorite to represent the SEC and the SEC champion, or to actually represent the SEC in the college football playoff, maybe even win an SEC title. There were some things put out there in that regard. Now they've had a tough stretch of games. Garrett Nussmeier has not been healthy all year long. He's been up and down. He's been battling oblique injuries, knee problems, ankle problems, mobility issues, things like that. Like, he has not looked like last year's Garrett Nussmeier. Last year's Garrett Nussmeier was a gunslinger. He can make any throw anywhere. He can make plays happen in the pocket, outside the pocket, throwing on rhythm, throwing off platform on the run, scrambling, all of that. Like, he made things happen for LSU. Now, they couldn't play a lick of defense. If they could, they would have been in the college football playoff. But this year, they can finally play a lick of defense, and Garrett Nussmeier is struggling, right? And I watched the game against South Carolina. I had two screens going. Just how big of a nerd I am. I had two screens going. I had LSU, South Carolina. I had Georgia versus Auburn, right? Auburn's they're hustling backwards right now. They're 0-3 in conference. But LSU, I thought it was one of those games where I felt like they were in control against South Carolina. And I don't think they ever were going to lose control of that game because I just don't think South Carolina is very good offensively. They just fired their offensive line coach. Mike Shula's probably soon to follow. It's been a disaster on that side of the ball at South Carolina. And that game should have been 38-14 42-45-10. Like that game they should have been miles ahead of them. Talent wise, they are. Offensive execution, they are. Defense, they are. But there's something up. And I think this is why people are considering Vanderbilt the favorites. There's something up in Baton Rouge. There's something weird happening there. I can't put my finger on it. Can't really explain it. It's just a feeling of like, something's not right because they spent $18.5 million in the transfer portal. The dudes they got on both sides of the ball, outstanding. Now, Mike Huseman and I talked about them replacing the offensive line, especially the tackles. That hasn't worked out too well for them. They've been struggling a little bit, adjusting. That probably contributes to some of the inconsistencies on offense. They can't really run the ball that great. I think they're second to last in the conference, and the team that was last is the team they beat last night in South Carolina. So it's a weird vibe because Nussmeier's struggling. Brian Kelly's all grumpy, and I mean he's usually grumpy, but he's kind of a little bit more like it just seems like he's a little touchy this time. And he coming off a loss against Ole Miss, they had to chew on that for 2 weeks. There's just something off about them right now, and I think Vanderbilt's sitting in a really good position here against LSU. Now this is going to be a tough game. There's no doubt about that. This is going to be a 4-quarter slugfest, and this is going to be Vanderbilt's going to have to. They're going to have to play their butts off to win this game. This is just because LSU's struggling doesn't mean they're bad. They got some lightning. They can strike you. And they struck South Carolina on a couple of occasions to really just kind of grab a firm control of that game. But there was times, Nussmeier had 2 interceptions, one down inside the deep red zone, inside the 10. They fumbled going into the end zone for a touchback, penalties, things like that. They had 3 turnovers. That's not going to get it. And had South Carolina not shot themselves in the foot so much with penalties and taking bad sacks and turn the ball over themselves, I think this game could have been a lot more interesting given that everything else LSU made mistakes on would have been the same. It's just like I said, there's something off because they're not making the plays you think they're going to make. Their defense is not dominating in the way you think they would. It's not as cut and dry. Like they're not with their roster. They should be far and away the best team in the SEC. They should be, but Alabama right now is that team. Alabama's starting to kind of separate themselves a little bit. There's not really anybody else that's separating themselves at all. Georgia, they got lucky. They were supposed to be the ones that were going to separate, but they got lucky. And, the way Kirby reacted, they did not, he was lucky to get out of that one. Missouri's still good. I think Missouri's still good. I don't know if anyone's panicking on them, but they're still good. And they showed it. I mean, they went toe-to-toe with Alabama, just like Vanderbilt did. And, I think they made a lot of the same mistakes that Vanderbilt did. They just kind of you get into this psychological block of just like, what are we doing here? And then you look at the end of the game, you're like, why? We were still in it. Why did we go for it? Why did we fake punt in that spot? Why couldn't we? The same things that plagued Vanderbilt are the same things that plagued Missouri in that game. So Tennessee, they looked shaky against Arkansas. Now, Arkansas is pretty motivated with Bobby Petrino, but at the end of the day, their defense is horrendous, and they have no business being on the field with Tennessee. And Tennessee let them hang around. So if I'm a Vol fan, I'm considered with that. So looking at the SEC, it's just like there's no team that's separating, and LSU's certainly in the middle of that pack somewhere of like, hey, they should be playing a lot better than they are, and they're not. They're not executing. Their defense is not dominating the way it should be. Their offense is not clicking the way it should be, and a lot of that is inconsistencies at the quarterback position. So Vanderbilt being favorites in this game, it's a coin flip. It's not a spread where you're like, oh gosh, they're like 6.5 point favorites. No, I mean it's a 1.5, 2.5 spread depending on where you're looking. But still, the fact that this game is not like, I think coming into the season, if I had to guess what this spread would have been, I would have said minimum 6.5 favoring LSU based on their roster, based on the preseason hype, based on everything. But now, like, tables have turned a little bit. It shows you A, where LSU is, and it shows you B, where Vanderbilt is. Vanderbilt is way up here above its pay grade, which is great because it's setting a foundation. But LSU has also come down to the pack a little bit as well. Like LSU, with all the money they spent, they should be way up here in the clouds. And Vanderbilt, as good as they are, there should be some separation there, just based on rosters alone. But there's not. Vandy's executing outside of the second half of the Alabama game. Vandy's executing, and LSU is not executing on a consistent basis. They are at times, and they aren't at times. And a good team like Ole Miss was able to take advantage. South Carolina was not. So, defending Nussmeier, what is it about Nussmeier? We'll tell you. I'll tell you next. All right, Mazda. This episode is brought to you by Mazda's Moving the Game Forward. For those of you who believe it, it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. So this week's moment that moved the game forward is the bye week. The bye week is the MVP here. Allowed everybody to get recharged, resettled. The banged up guys a little bit healthier. The guys that needed rest. The guys who needed to step back a little bit, like Diego Pavia, a chance to step back a little bit and really kind of get recharged. So I'm very excited about what's moving forward as far as coming out of the bye week and coming into this LSU game. This is a very pivotal game. So hopefully the bye week became the MVP. So when you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen each and every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, if you need a second listen, Chris Gordy is the place to go. He does a great job covering the league, man, and it's really good. Locked On SEC, and our whole family of SEC shows on this network is phenomenal. So any show you pick, you're going to get top-notch content. So check it all out at some point. Matt Moscone at Locked On LSU. Hopefully, we'll be doing a crossover this week, so you'll get to kind of see him. I'll get to kind of meet him one-on-one for the first time. Oddly enough, we didn't do a crossover last year, so maybe this year that'll change. Hopefully, anyway. I want to talk about Garrett Nussmeier. Like, he's the key to this whole thing, right? He's the key to LSU's offensive success. Obviously, he's the quarterback. But he's the key kind of like, as he struggles, I think the team struggles. And as his ebbs and flows becomes the team's ebbs and flows. And that's typical of a quarterback. It's nothing new. It's nothing surprising. But I think LSU, I think it goes a little bit further in that direction than most situations. Vanderbilt's the same way with Diego Pavia. They ebb and flow with him. As Diego Pavia struggles, Vanderbilt struggles, as you could see against Alabama. As he's great, they're great, as you can see Alabama last year and some of the big wins. So it's a scenario where LSU really just needs to get Nussmeier either back fully on track or they need to put him on the shelf, because him being banged up and injured is not really. And I think he's getting healthier. So for their sake, I think things are getting better in that regard. He looked a lot better, looked a lot cleaner for the most part against South Carolina. Not as clean as they'd probably like him to be, but you're seeing it now. Maybe like after this week, he'll start to figure it out. Maybe just take one more week to kind of try to figure it out and then just try to get it settled after this week, that would be great. But before I really dive into Nussmeier specifically and defending him and figuring out what to do there, here's how I see LSU just overall. Okay. The LSU, they're coming off a home win against South Carolina. They won 20-10. Garrett Nussmeier had a solid night, but he threw 2 interceptions. That's kind of the roller coaster nature of the whole thing. They moved here's a caveat about LSU's offense. They move the ball well, but they struggle to score. Like they can't. It's kind of like the bend but don't break element of their defense, where they give up a ton of yards, but they don't give up a lot of points. It's like that on the offensive version, where you get a lot of points or you get a lot of yards, but you just can't convert those into points. And some of that is turnovers, some of that's penalties, some of that is just inaccuracy and just the inability to run the ball consistently and things like that. It's a whole lot of factors when you deal with that. But the defense is loaded with talent. They can take over a game at any point. But they gave up 317 yards against South Carolina. And if had South Carolina not made a bunch of mistakes and turnovers and it just poor coaching decisions, and they got screwed by the refs on that fake punt, which I don't know if that would have made any sort of difference, but we'll never know. But maybe it would have. I don't know. But LSU's solid against the run. They're solid against the pass. They're 6, 7, 8, somewhere in that range. Rankings in the SEC in both categories. They're number 3, I think, in scoring defense, but they're 7 in rush defense, and I think they're 6 in pass defense. So like they're right there. They're right there near the midline, and that's pretty good. And but it's not elite, but it's good, and it gets the job done. Their notable players: Garrett Nussmeier, obviously. Trey'Dez Green, the tight end, is going to be a huge X factor for them as they look for more ways to feed the offense through him. Wide receiver Kyle Parker is somebody that's emerging as a playmaker that you need to watch. And defensively, obviously Harold Perkins, who I feel like he's in year 8. I can't really say too much because Diego Pavia is in the same boat, but Harold Perkins has been there for a while, and Whit Weeks as well. They're 2 playmaking linebackers that really do a whole lot for LSU's defense. So, but looking at Garrett Nussmeier specifically, all right, now they're going to try to get Trey'Dez Green involved in the game, and Vanderbilt's defense has to figure out, and I'll probably break more of some of this stuff down as the week goes on. But let's start with Garrett Nussmeier because he's the obvious key. He's like that oversized key you get when you get the key to the city. Like that's how big of a key Garrett Nussmeier is. You can use that joke later, but defending him is still. Even though he's banged up, it's still very, very tough because he's still an elite quarterback. He's just banged up. He's got, his confidence is shaken a little bit because of the injuries and because of the struggles that come with dealing with these injuries. Like he can't, when he's dealing with his oblique, he can't fully rotate into a ball and get as much zip and velocity on it as he needs to with having, ankle and knee problems. Like he had some knee problems in training camp. He's got, I think he has a banged up ankle. Like there's things that he can't, it's hard to contend with. It's hard to work around. And these defenses South Carolina's defense probably didn't, he threw 2 interceptions. So to a certain degree, yeah, they tested him and they really kind of made him work, but like they should have made him work a lot harder. They should have made it more difficult on him. I think with Dylan Stewart and the crew they have on defense, they really should have been able to get after Garrett Nussmeier and make this kind of a low scoring rock fight. And they almost did. But, the key for Vanderbilt's defense is going to be this. How good is that ankle? How good is that oblique? We're going to make you find out. We're not going to let you sit in the pocket and pick us apart. He's going to hit some RPOs. He's going to do some things like that, but you've got to make it difficult and you got to get creative with your coverages and you got to figure out a way to shore up your zones. Right. And I don't know if cover 2, we've been pretty bad at cover 2. I think because the safeties and corners just kind of they're not on the same page a lot of times in that coverage. And for cover 2, you really have to communicate between the safety and the corner. And you really have to, the corner really has a lot of responsibility over there on the boundary, what we call the tracks, the railroads, the rail, I should say, for short. So that rail coverage there, and when the quarterback throws it between the safety and corner in cover 2, it's called a hole shot because there's a natural hole there. And Vanderbilt's had trouble defending that. Ty Simpson was elite hitting that. And Georgia tried to play cover 2 against them too, and that didn't work. So I don't know if Vanderbilt just needs to scrap cover 2, put it on the shelf for a little bit until they can figure out how to communicate. Maybe they did over the bye week. But I think they should figure out, do some man coverage here. Those guys are going to be tough to cover man. Do some quarters to where you get your corners in the deep quarter or deep third. Maybe play some 3 if you're going to do some. Just kind of mix some things up. And I think you're not really – Garrett Nussmeier is veteran enough to where you're not really going to confuse him a whole lot, but you're going to get a chance to put him on the run and make these guys react, make him make those throws. Because you get him on the run, like you can't really plant off a bad ankle, or you can't really step into a bad ankle. If your oblique's hurt, you can't really throw on the run because you have to get a lot of torque and a lot of twist to get anything on the ball or to prevent it from sailing. So if you can get him in some off-platform throws, if that oblique's not 100%, which obliques, they're tough, man. These muscle pulls, dude, they're tough to overcome. And if it's not 100%, and all of a sudden he's trying to make an off-platform throw, he sails one, Colby Taylor's right there, or Dante Carter, or whoever, a Merlin Sewell, whoever's back there, whoever happens to be on the receiving end of that, you could really put yourself in a good situation to take the momentum of this game and really take control of this game. And it could be something in a tight game with 2 good teams, with a team that's been overachieving a ton and a team that's been underachieving. Like the confidence hit of the underachieving team and the confidence boost of the overachieving team, that can almost create a tidal wave of, self-doubt on one end and supreme confidence on the other. This game might swing in a way that LSU is not ready for. And that's something that, testing out Garrett Nussmeier and testing out how healthy he is, that's got to be the way to go. So, but what can this offense do? What can this offense do against LSU's defense? They're tough. They're bend. They don't break. They don't break at all. How can Vanderbilt get them to break? We'll scratch the surface on that next. Hey, it's FanDuel, man. Football is just so much fun to bet on because it's just all the games have been exciting. College, pro. Some of the baseball games have been exciting, like the Mariners walking off the Tigers in 15 innings. Like that's got to be something. So right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. Yeah, that's an offer you don't want to miss. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Now, what do I love about FanDuel? Well, I hit this big parlay over the weekend. I was parlayed some of the games, and it was USC, which they beat the heck out of Michigan, which was kind of surprising. It was Utah, who just absolutely took Arizona State to the woodshed, and then it was. Who was it was a four-legger. I can't remember off the top of my head the other 2 legs, but I hit a 4-leg parlay. And I do small bets, but I threw down a $2 bet, won $25. So that was good. Anyway, but it just, honestly, I watched some games that I wouldn't normally watch because of FanDuel. And it's just something that, hey, I put a little bit of action on it, and hey, it made me actually enjoy that game. And whether you're a casual fan or you love diving into stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. And what are you waiting for, guys? Visit FanDuel.com, download the FanDuel app, and get started. Also, most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. And that's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you've been putting off organizing your finance, Monarch is for you. Monarch does all the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes. You see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. So, I love it because I can look at the categories and I can look, okay, I'm spending a lot here. I'm saving a lot here. Maybe I just maybe I cool it in this category. Maybe I try to beef up this category and, hey, I can hit my goals, man. And I can maximize some things. And maybe I just need to start having some investments and things like that. But if I can just kind of get out of this rut I'm in financially, I can. But the only way I can do that is if I know how deep the rut is, and Monarch Money will help me do that. So don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONCollege. All right, wrapping up the show here, Locked On Vandy. Thanks for making us your first listen each and every day. Thank you for choosing Locked On and Locked On Vandy. I certainly appreciate you. Locked On Vandy on all social media platforms. Don't have a lot of time for this, but we do have a week, and I will be talking about these things. Defending Garrett Nussmeier is a multi-level, multifaceted plan. Same with attacking LSU's defense. So the key is this: patience is the biggest key. Because I think what LSU's defense does is they bend, and then they strike. They bend, and then they snap back and break you because you get impatient, because you want to make the big play, because you try, okay. It's just offensive coordinators are impatient people. We want to score. I say we because I'm an offensive coordinator. Or I was. I'm retired now. But I'm retired to do this, actually. I'm in my John Gruden media phase, right? So being an OC, patience is the toughest thing to achieve because you just want to score. You want to test every bulb in that scoreboard. You want to light it up, man. You want to see how high that number can get. You want those stats. You want those highlights. You want excitement. But defenses know that, and they use that against you because they're like, okay, we're going to make sure you're okay with taking a check down. You're okay with taking a 5-yard hitch. You're okay with gaining 3, gaining 6. You're okay nickel and diming it down the field. You're okay scoring in 12 plays when they know that I want to score in 5 plays or less or 6 plays or less. Like, they know that. And what Tim Beck is elite at is saying, you want to score in 12 plays? We'll score in 14. Okay, that's cool. Yeah, we'll take 3, 4, 5 yards of carry. We'll just grind the ball down the field. We'll make you make the mistake. And then LSU's defense is the same way. So it's two philosophies that are colliding here with Vanderbilt's offense and LSU's defense. It's bend, don't break on defense, and it is, we're just going to put pressure. We're going to lean on you. We're going to make you make the mistake. We're going to test how good your foundation is, how strong your will is, how patient you are to stick with what you're doing. Now, Vanderbilt uncharacteristically got out of that. They didn't run much in the second half against Alabama. They could have because the game was still well within reach. It was tied. They were down by 3 for a lot of the second half. And then it got to 6, and then of course they put that exclamation point. So if had they stayed patient, I don't know that Diego Pavia gets the feeling that he has to make some big play and force the ball in a window that he had no business forcing it into. And I think maybe Vanderbilt might have had a chance, but that game's behind us. I could woulda, coulda, shoulda this thing to death. But the point of all this is not the woulda, coulda, shoulda on the Alabama game. It's the lesson of, hey, like your game plan wasn't all that bad. And you kind of got away from it a little bit. And yeah, Alabama took some of that away. And yeah, LSU is going to take some of that away. And they're going to make you. They're going to make you beat them in a way that you're uncomfortable beating them. And you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable a little bit so that you can get back to the things that you're comfortable with. You have to be able to hit them on a few pass plays to where now you can get them rocked back on their heels a little bit, and you can regain your bread and butter. And you can get back to doing what you want to do. And then you put the pressure on LSU's defense to, oh crap, now they're cramming it down our throat. They're running counter, they're running G lead, they're running shovel, they're doing everything they want to do, and there's nothing we can do about it, and we're struggling. And, it's going to put them in a position to where now they feel like they have to get some exotics in. They feel like they have to throw a lot of bodies at the run game. And then all of a sudden, that's when you strike. And they had the dudes to do it. They have the horses to do it. They didn't last year. They do this year. And that puts your team in a really good position, momentum-wise, confidence-wise, all of that. But we're going to talk about all that as we progress through the week, and we're going to break all that down. We're going to wrap it up into like 3 big keys to the game. Like I'm going to summarize it all somehow. It's a lot, but I will. And hopefully we'll talk to Matt Moscana. We'll have Mike Huseman on, maybe one other person. I'll try to go live this week maybe, and we'll get back in the groove of things. But until then, hey, it's good to be back on a big game, and this certainly fits the bill. But have a great day. Anchor down. Peace.